Lisa Martinez stepped off the transport ship and into the bright lights of Kepler Station Academy. She carried only a small bag with her belongings and a data pad with her class schedule. The station was huge, bigger than any building she had ever seen on Earth. Glass walls showed the endless black of space, dotted with stars. Other students walked past her in the main hall. Most were taller than humans, with strange skin colors and extra arms or legs. Some had fur, others had scales. That caught the light. A few floated in the air using wings or special gravity devices. Lisa tried not to stare, but everything was so different from home. The academy had been accepting students from different worlds for 20 years. Lisa was the first human to ever attend classes here. She knew this made her special, but it also made her nervous. Everyone would be watching to see what the human girl could do. A tall blue alien with 4 eyes approached her. "You must be the exchange student from Earth," he said in a friendly voice. His translator device made his words sound normal to Lisa's ears. "I am Professor Kelm. Welcome to our academy." Lisa nodded politely. "Thank you, sir. I'm Lisa Martinez." "I'm excited to be here." Professor Kelm smiled, showing white teeth that were too sharp. "We have heard much about your world. Earth is famous throughout the galaxy as a death world. It must have been very dangerous growing up there." "It wasn't too bad," Lisa said quietly. She had been taught to play down Earth's dangers. The diplomatic team back home had warned her not to scare the other students with stories about predators, diseases, and natural disasters. "Come, let me show you to your room," Professor Kelm said. "Classes begin tomorrow. I think you will find our curriculum quite challenging." Lisa's room was small but comfortable. The bed was too soft for her taste, but she didn't complain. Through her window, she could see other students walking around the academy grounds. Some were playing games she didn't recognize. Others sat in groups, talking and laughing. She unpacked her few belongings and placed them carefully in the dresser. Her clothes looked plain compared to the colorful outfits she had seen other students wearing. Her books were actual paper books, not digital like everyone else seemed to use. She hoped the other students wouldn't think she was poor or backward. The next morning, Lisa woke up early out of habit. On Earth, sleeping too late could mean missing important survival information. She dressed in her simple clothes and made her way to the dining hall. The dining hall was enormous, with hundreds of tables and chairs of different sizes. The air smelled of unfamiliar foods from dozens of different worlds. Lisa found the human food section and took some items that looked safe to eat. She sat alone at a small table, eating quietly and watching the other students. They seemed so confident and comfortable with each other. Many had been friends for years, coming from allied worlds that had been part of the galactic community for generations. "Are you the human?" a voice asked behind her. Lisa turned to see a small green alien with large eyes. She looked young, maybe Lisa's age or a little younger. "Yes, I'm Lisa," she said. "I'm Zara. I'm from Kepler 3. My professor said you're from a death world. Is that really true?" Lisa nodded. "Earth is classified as a death world, yes." Zara's eyes grew even larger. "Wow, I've never met anyone from a death world before. Are you really strong? Can you lift heavy things?" "I'm pretty normal for a human," Lisa said. She didn't want to lie, but she also didn't want to show off. "We're just adapted to our environment." More students began to gather around her table. Word was spreading quickly that the human had arrived. Lisa felt uncomfortable with all the attention, but she answered their questions politely. "Is it true that your world has creatures that eat people?" asked a tall, thin alien with purple skin. "Some animals can be dangerous," Lisa admitted, "but most of them leave humans alone if we're careful. What about the weather? I heard your world has storms that can destroy entire cities." "Hurricanes and tornadoes can be destructive," Lisa said, "but we have warning systems and safe places to go." The questions continued for several minutes. Lisa tried to make Earth sound normal and safe, but she could tell the other students were both fascinated and frightened by her answers. Finally, a loud chime sounded throughout the dining hall. "Time for first period," Zara said. "What class do you have?" Lisa checked her schedule. Advanced Combat Theory. The other students looked impressed. That's a graduate-level class, one of them said. Are you sure you're ready for it? I'll do my best, Lisa said. The combat theory classroom was smaller than the dining hall, but still much larger than any classroom on Earth. About 30 students sat at curved desks facing a large screen. Lisa found an empty seat near the back and tried to blend in. Professor Voss, a gray-skinned alien with 6 arms, began the lesson. Today we will discuss defensive strategies for colony worlds. Who can tell me the most important factor in planetary defense? Several students raised their hands. Lisa listened carefully as they gave their answers. Most talked about shields, weapons, or space fleets. Their answers were technically correct, but seemed to miss something important. Interesting answers, Professor Voss said. But you're all thinking like civilized beings. What about you, Miss Martinez? What would a Deathworlder say? All eyes turned to Lisa. She felt her cheeks get warm, but she stood up to answer. The most important factor is the people defending the colony. Technology can fail, but motivated defenders who know their environment will always find a way to fight back. The classroom was quiet for a moment. Then Professor Voss nodded approvingly. Excellent answer. This is exactly the kind of thinking that has made Earth humans so successful despite their technological disadvantages. Lisa sat back down, feeling proud but also aware that she had just made herself stand out even more. Some students were looking at her with new respect, but others seemed annoyed that she had given the answer they couldn't think of after class. Lisa walked to her next course, Advanced Xenobiology. The hallways were crowded with students changing classes. She kept her head down and tried to move through the crowd without bumping into anyone. Watch where you're going, Deathworlder, a deep voice said behind her. Lisa turned to see a massive alien blocking her path. He was nearly 8 feet tall, with thick armor plating covering his body and 4 powerful arms. His species was called Craxi, and Lisa remembered reading that they controlled several star systems through military force. Sorry, Lisa said, stepping aside. I didn't see you there. Of course you didn't, the Craxi said. Your kind isn't known for intelligence. I'm Vexstar, and I suggest you stay out of my way while you're here. Other students in the hallway stopped. To watch, Lisa felt her heart rate increase, but she kept her voice calm. I'll be more careful, she said. Vexstar laughed, a harsh sound that made Lisa's teeth ache. See that you do. This academy has standards, and we can't have primitives lowering the quality of education. He walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing down the hall. The other students slowly went back to their business, but Lisa noticed some of them whispering and pointing at her. Lisa continued to her next class, but her mind was still on the encounter with Vexstar. She had dealt with bullies before, but never one who was twice her size and clearly looking for trouble. She would have to be very careful around him. The rest of her first day passed without incident. Her professors were mostly kind and helpful, though she could tell they were curious about having a human in their classes. Her classmates were polite but distant, unsure how to interact with someone from a Deathworld. That evening, Lisa sat in her room reviewing her notes from the day. The classes were challenging but not impossible. She was confident she could keep up with the academic work. The social situation was more complicated. She thought about Vexstar's warning and decided to avoid him as much as possible. She was here to learn and represent humanity well, not to start fights with bullies. If she stayed quiet and focused on her studies, maybe she could get through her time at the academy without any serious problems. Lisa turned off her lights and tried to sleep on the too-soft bed. Through her window, she could see the stars that surrounded the space station. Somewhere out there was Earth with its dangerous animals and violent weather. But right now, she wasn't sure which environment was more threatening to her survival. Lisa's second week at the academy started with more trouble from Vexstar. She was walking to her morning class when the large Craxi appeared in the hallway ahead of her. He was talking loudly to his friends, making sure she could hear every word. I heard the human girl thinks she's smart, Vexstar said, his forearms waving as he spoke. But everyone knows Deathworlders are just animals that learn to use tools. They don't belong in a place of real learning. Lisa kept walking, pretending not to hear him. She had learned this trick back on Earth when dealing with bullies. If you didn't react, sometimes they would get bored and find someone else to bother, but Vexstar wasn't getting bored. As Lisa tried to walk past him, he stepped sideways and blocked her path. His massive body filled the entire width of the hallway. "Excuse me," Lisa said politely. "I need to get to class." "Ask nicely," Vexstar said, grinning to show his sharp teeth. "Say please, little Deathworlder." Lisa felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice calm. "Please let me pass." Vexstar laughed and moved aside, but only barely. As Lisa squeezed past him, he deliberately bumped into her with his shoulder. The impact sent her stumbling into the wall, her books scattered across the floor. "Oops," Vexstar said, not sounding sorry at all. "I forgot how fragile Deathworlders are. Maybe you should watch where you're going." Lisa gathered her books quickly and continued to class. Her shoulder ached from the impact, but she didn't let it show. She had experienced worse pain during survival training on Earth. The same thing happened 3 more times that week. Vexstar would appear in her path, make loud comments about humans, and then knock into her as she tried to pass. Each time, Lisa stayed calm and polite, but inside, she was getting more and more frustrated. Commander Jake Sullivan noticed the bruises on Lisa's arm during their weekly check-in meeting. He was the human military officer assigned to watch over her during the exchange program. "What happened to your arm?" he asked, his voice concerned. "I bumped into something," Lisa said. She didn't want to get anyone in trouble, especially not when she was representing all of humanity. Commander Sullivan frowned. "Lisa, if someone is hurting you, you need to tell me." "That's what I'm here for. It's nothing serious," Lisa insisted. "Just some students who don't like having a human around." "I can handle it." "I'm sure you can," Sullivan said. "But remember, you're not just any human, you're a diplomat. If someone hurts you, it could cause problems between Earth and the Galactic Federation." Lisa nodded, but she had no intention of causing diplomatic problems. She would deal with Vexstar on her own, the way she had always dealt with bullies. The harassment got worse during her 3rd week. Vexstar started following her to the dining hall, sitting at nearby tables and making loud comments about human eating habits. He would pretend to be talking to his friends, but his voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at the way she eats," he would say. "Like a savage animal. I heard Deathworlders don't even cook their food properly. They just tear it apart with their teeth." Lisa tried to ignore him, but other students were starting to stare. Some looked uncomfortable with Vexstar's behavior, but none of them spoke up to defend her. She was the outsider, the strange girl from the dangerous world, and they didn't want to get involved. The comments got more personal as the days went by. Vexstar started talking about human intelligence, human culture, and human appearance. He made jokes about how small and weak humans were compared to Craxi. He suggested that Earth humans were too primitive to understand advanced mathematics or science. "I heard they still fight wars with chemical explosives," he said one day, loud. Enough for half the dining hall to hear. "They probably don't even understand how energy weapons work." Lisa's hand tightened on her fork, but she kept eating. She knew more about weapons than Vexstar could imagine. Human military training was far more advanced than most aliens realized. Precisely because Earth was so dangerous, her academic performance began to suffer from the stress. She was still getting good grades, but she found it harder to concentrate during lectures. She would catch herself looking around the classroom, checking to see if Vexstar was there, planning escape routes in case he tried to corner her. Professor Voss noticed her distraction during combat theory class. "Miss Martinez, you seem troubled today. Is there something on your mind?" Lisa straightened up in her seat. "No, sir, I'm fine." "I hope so. Your insights have been valuable to our discussions. It would be unfortunate if outside concerns affected your academic performance." After class, Lisa walked slowly to her next course, trying to delay the moment when she would have to face Vexstar again. She had learned his schedule by now, and she knew he would be waiting in the main hallway. Sure enough, he was there with his usual group of friends. They were all craxy, big, and aggressive-looking. When they saw Lisa coming, they spread out across the hallway, making it impossible for her to pass without getting close to them. "Here comes the primitive," Vexstar announced. "Tell us, Deathworlder, how many of your people die every day from your planet's natural disasters?" Lisa tried to walk around them, but they moved to block her path. She was trapped in the middle of the group, surrounded by aliens who were all much bigger and stronger than her. "I asked you a question," Vexstar said, his voice getting louder. "Don't your people have manners? Or are you too stupid to understand what I'm saying?" "I understand you perfectly," Lisa said quietly. "Now please let me pass." "Not until you answer my question. How many humans die every day because your world is too dangerous to live on?" Lisa felt her heart rate increasing. Her body was preparing for a fight, flooding her system with adrenaline. She had to force herself to stay calm. "Every world has its dangers," she said. "Earth has taught us to be careful and prepared." "Careful and prepared," Vexstar repeated mockingly. "Is that why you're so small and weak? Because your world made you into cowards?" The other Craxi laughed at this. Lisa felt her face getting hot, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm not looking for trouble," she said. "I just want to get to class." "Maybe trouble is looking for you," Vexstar said. He stepped closer, using his height to loom over her. "Maybe it's time someone taught you that Deathworlders don't belong in civilized society." Lisa looked up at him, measuring the distance between them. She could smell his breath. See the scars on his armor plating from old fights. He was trying to intimidate her, to make her back down and show weakness in front of the other students. "I'm not afraid of you," she said softly. Vexstar's eyes narrowed. "You should be." Just then the class bell rang. Students began moving through the hallways, heading to their next courses. Vexstar's friends started to break up the group, not wanting to be late for their own classes. "This isn't over, Deathworlder," Vexstar said as he walked away. "Sooner or later, you're going to learn your place." Lisa stood in the hallway for a moment, letting her heart rate return to normal. She had managed to avoid a fight, but she knew Vexstar was getting bolder. His harassment was escalating, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep backing down that evening. Lisa sat in her room and wrote a message to her parents back on Earth. She told them about her classes and her professors, but she didn't mention Vexstar or the problems she was having. They would only worry, and there was nothing they could do to help her from so far away. She also wrote a report for the diplomatic corps, as she was required to do every week. Again, she focused on her academic progress and left out the harassment. She was supposed to be building good relationships with other species, not causing problems, but as she lay in bed that night, Lisa found herself thinking about the survival training she had received before leaving Earth. Her instructors had taught her dozens of ways to disable or kill an attacker, techniques developed over centuries of human warfare. They had warned her that some aliens might see humans as weak or primitive, and they had prepared her for situations just like this one. "Remember," her instructor had said, "the goal is always to avoid conflict. But if conflict comes to you, end it quickly and decisively. Don't give your enemy time to realize what's happening." Lisa closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her mind kept reviewing combat techniques. She hoped she would never need to use them, but she was beginning to think that hope might be wishful thinking. Outside her window, the stars looked cold and distant. Somewhere among them was Earth, where humans had learned to survive against impossible odds. Vexstar thought he was dealing with a weak, primitive creature. He had no idea what kind of predator he was actually provoking. Lisa finally fell asleep, but her dreams were filled with images of the African savanna, where her ancestors had learned to hunt. In her dreams, she was not the prey. She was the hunter. And something big and dangerous was about to learn the difference. The fourth week at the academy brought final exams, and Lisa was feeling the pressure. She had been studying late every night, trying to prove that humans could succeed at the highest levels of galactic education. Her grades were excellent, but the stress was wearing on her. She had barely slept the night before her advanced xenogeology exam. Every time she closed her eyes, she could hear Vexstar's voice making cruel jokes about her species. The harassment had continued every day, getting worse as other students began to notice and whisper among themselves. Lisa walked into the xenogeology classroom feeling tired and on edge. The exam was important to her final grade, and she couldn't afford to mess it up. She found her usual seat near the back and pulled out her writing materials. Professor Quilm, an elderly alien with wrinkled gray skin and kind eyes, began setting up his lecture materials. He was one of Lisa's favorite teachers, always patient and encouraging when she asked questions about planetary formation and geological processes. Today we will discuss the formation of Deathworlds, Professor Quilm announced to the class. These rare planetary environments produce some of the most fascinating geological features in the galaxy. Lisa perked up with interest. This was a topic she knew well from personal experience. She had grown up on Earth, seeing firsthand how volcanic activity, tectonic shifts, and extreme weather patterns had shaped her world's landscape. Deathworlds are characterized by high levels of geological activity, Professor Quilm continued. Frequent earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and severe weather patterns create environments that are extremely hostile to most forms of life. A student in the front row raised her hand. Professor, how do any species manage to evolve on such dangerous worlds? Excellent question, Professor Quilm said. The species that do survive on Deathworlds develop remarkable adaptations. They become stronger, faster, and more resilient than species from safer environments. Lisa nodded, taking careful notes. She was enjoying the lecture until she heard a familiar voice from across the room. If Deathworld species are so tough, why are they usually so primitive? Vexstar's voice cut through the classroom like a blade. Shouldn't they be more advanced if they're so special? Professor Quilm looked uncomfortable. Well, the energy required. For survival on Deathworlds often limits technological development. Species must focus on staying alive rather than advancing their civilization. So they're basically smart animals? Vexstar said, his voice getting louder. Too busy fighting for survival to develop real intelligence. Lisa felt her pencil crack in her grip. She forced herself to keep writing, but her handwriting was getting shaky. The professor was trying to move on to the next topic, but Vexstar wasn't finished. I heard that Deathworld species sometimes eat their own kind when food runs low, he said, turning to look directly at Lisa. Is that true, Professor? Do they resort to cannibalism when things get desperate? The classroom went completely silent. Even Professor Quilm looked shocked by the question. Lisa's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. That's not something we need to discuss in this class, Professor Quilm said weakly. I'm just curious about Deathworld behavior, Vexstar continued, his eyes still fixed on Lisa. After all, we have a real live Deathworlder here with us. Maybe she can tell us if the stories are true. Lisa's pencil snapped completely in half. She stared down at the broken pieces, trying to control her breathing. Every instinct in her body was screaming at her to respond, to defend herself and her species, but she knew she couldn't. Not here, not now. Perhaps the human can explain why her species was too primitive to leave their murder world until we found them. Vexstar said, his voice dripping with contempt. Were they too busy killing each other to develop space travel? Professor Quilm tried to interrupt. Vexstar, please return to your seat and let's continue with the lesson. But Vexstar stood up instead, his massive frame towering over the other students. No, I think this is educational. We should learn about primitive species and their savage behaviors. He walked over to Lisa's desk, each heavy footstep echoing in the silent classroom. Lisa kept her eyes down, focusing on her broken pencil and trying to stay calm. I heard Deathworlders eat their own young when resources run low, Vexstar said, now standing right next to her desk. Is that how you stayed alive long enough to contaminate our academy with your presence? Lisa's vision started to blur around the edges. Her heart rate was spiking, and she could feel adrenaline flooding her system. This was exactly the kind of situation her survival training had prepared her for, a larger predator threatening her, trying to establish dominance through intimidation. Answer me, little Deathworlder, Vexstar said, leaning down so his face was close to hers. Or are you too stupid to understand the question? Lisa slowly raised her head and looked at him. Her voice was barely a whisper. I understand perfectly. Then, answer, Vexstar demanded. Tell us about your savage species and their disgusting habits. Lisa stood up from her chair, moving slowly and carefully. She was much smaller than Vexstar, but something in her posture made him take a step back. My species, she said quietly, has survived on the most dangerous world in known space for millions of years. We didn't get there by being stupid or savage. We got there by being smart, adaptable, and absolutely ruthless when we need to be. The classroom was so quiet that Lisa could hear the air recycling system humming in the walls. Every student was staring at her, and she could see fear in some of their eyes. Are you threatening me? Vexstar asked, but his voice wasn't as confident as before. No, Lisa said, sitting back down. I'm educating you. Just like you wanted. Vexstar's face darkened with anger. He had been trying to humiliate her, to make her look weak in front of the other students. Instead, she had turned his attack around and made him look foolish. You little savage, he snarled. You think you're better than us because you come from a dangerous world? You're nothing but a primitive animal that learned to wear clothes. Lisa picked up another pencil and began writing in her notebook again. If you say so. The dismissive response enraged Vexstar even more. He had been trying to get a reaction from her for weeks, and now she was ignoring him completely. His pride couldn't handle being dismissed by someone he considered inferior. Look at me when I'm talking to you, he demanded. Lisa kept writing. I said look at me. Still no response. Vexstar's forearms were shaking with rage. The other students were watching in fascination and horror, waiting to see what would happen next. Professor Quilm was trying to call for security, but his hands were shaking too much to work his communicator. Too stupid to defend yourself, little Deathworlder? Vexstar shouted. Or are you waiting for your military babysitter to come save you? Lisa's pencil moved steadily across her notebook page. She was taking notes about volcanic activity on Class M planets, as if the giant angry alien standing next to her didn't exist. Fine, Vexstar said. If you won't look at me, maybe this will get your attention. He drew back his massive right hand and slapped Lisa across the face with enough force to knock a normal being unconscious. The sound of the impact echoed through the classroom like a gunshot. Lisa's head snapped to the side as she felt the taste of blood in her mouth. For exactly 3 seconds she sat perfectly still, her left hand pressed against her burning cheek. Her notebook was still open in front of her pencil still gripped in her right hand. Then something changed in her eyes. The careful control she had maintained for weeks, the diplomatic restraint that had kept her from fighting back, the human ability to endure pain and humiliation, all of it disappeared in an instant. Lisa turned to look at Vexstar, and he took an involuntary step backward. The expression on her face was unlike anything he had ever seen. It wasn't anger or hatred or fear. It was the cold, calculating look of a predator that had just decided to stop playing with its food. You shouldn't have done that, she said softly. The words sent a chill through every student in the classroom. They had all heard stories about Deathworld species, about their legendary violence and ruthless survival instincts. But seeing it firsthand was completely different from hearing about it in stories. Vexstar tried to maintain his confident attitude. What are you going to do about it, little girl? Cry? Run to your military handler? Lisa stood up slowly, her movements fluid and controlled. She was still much smaller than Vexstar, but somehow she seemed to fill the entire room with her presence. I'm going to teach you why humans survived on a death world, she said, and why picking fights with us is a very bad idea. The classroom held its breath, waiting for the explosion that everyone could feel building in the air. Lisa's hand was still pressed to her cheek, and she could feel the warmth of blood trickling from her split lip. 3 seconds had passed since Vexstar's slap. 3 seconds of perfect stillness while Lisa's mind shifted from diplomatic mode to survival mode, from human ambassador to apex predator. In the 4th second, Lisa moved. The movement was so fast that most students didn't see it happen. 1. moment she was standing calmly next to her desk, and the next moment Vexstar was on the floor, screaming in pain and clutching his face. Professor Quilm finally managed to activate his emergency communicator. What happened in those 3 seconds would be studied by military experts across the galaxy for years to come. The security cameras in the classroom recorded everything, capturing each movement with perfect clarity. When Lisa moved, it was not with wild rage or uncontrolled fury. Every action was precise, calculated, and devastatingly effective. Her body moved like a machine designed for one purpose: to end threats quickly and efficiently. Her first strike was a palm thrust to Vexstar's chest, right below where his armor plates met. The impact hit with the force of a sledgehammer, and the sound of cracking chitin echoed through the room. Vexstar's eyes went wide with shock and pain as his natural armor, evolved over millions of years to protect his species, simply shattered under the blow. Lisa had aimed for a specific spot she had learned about in her xenobiology classes. Every species had weak points, places where their natural defenses were thinner or less effective. Humans had been studying alien anatomy for 20 years, learning exactly where to hit for maximum damage. As Vexstar doubled over, gasping for air that wouldn't come, Lisa's knee came up to meet his descending face. The impact was perfectly timed and placed. His mandibles, the sharp jaw parts that Craxi used for fighting, broke with a wet cracking sound. Blood sprayed across the classroom floor as Vexstar stumbled backward, all forearms flailing wildly as he tried to keep his balance. But Lisa wasn't finished. She followed him as he fell, her hands moving with surgical precision. She struck the nerve clusters on his neck, pressure points that worked on most known species. Each blow was delivered with exactly the right amount of force, enough to cause massive pain and temporary paralysis, but not enough to kill. Lisa had been trained to disable, not destroy. Vexstar crashed into a desk, sending books and electronic devices flying across the room. He tried to swing one of his massive arms at Lisa, but she ducked under it easily and struck him again, this time targeting the joint where his arm connected to his shoulder. The joint popped with a sound like breaking wood. Vexstar screamed, a high-pitched wail that hurt the ears of everyone in the classroom. His left arm hung useless at his side, completely disabled by Lisa's precise attack. Lisa grabbed his head with both hands and drove her knee into his face again. This time she felt his cheekbone crack under the impact. Blood poured from his broken nose and split lips, staining his armor plates red. The entire sequence took less than 15 seconds. When it was over, Vexstar lay unconscious on the classroom floor, his massive body twisted at unnatural angles. His face was so swollen and damaged that he was barely recognizable. Lisa stood over him, breathing hard but otherwise unmarked except for the red handprint on her cheek where he had slapped her. She looked down at his broken form with no emotion at all, as if she was examining a piece of broken equipment. "Someone should call medical," she said calmly, her voice perfectly steady. "And security, probably." She walked back to her desk, stepping carefully around the pools of blood on the floor. She sat down, pulled out a fresh pencil, and continued taking notes on volcanic activity as if nothing had happened. The other students sat in stunned silence, too shocked to move or speak. They had just witnessed something that challenged everything. They thought they knew about humans and Deathworld species. Professor Quilm was the first to recover. His hands shaking, he activated his emergency communicator again. "Medical emergency in classroom 7, he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Critical injuries. Multiple fractures and possible internal damage." Within minutes, the classroom was filled with security officers and medical personnel. The medics immediately went to work on Vexstar, using scanners and healing devices to assess his injuries. "Multiple facial fractures," one medic reported. "Severe damage to the mandible structure, 3 broken ribs, dislocated shoulder. Possible concussion. Will he survive?" a security officer asked. "He'll live," the medic said grimly. "But he's going to need extensive reconstructive surgery. His face will never look the same." The security officers turned their attention to Lisa, who was still sitting calmly at her desk. Chief Security Officer Brandt, a tall insectoid alien with compound eyes, approached her carefully. Miss Martinez, he said slowly, I need you to come with us for questioning. Lisa looked up from her notes. Of course, should I bring my things? Just, yourself for now, Brant said. He had dealt with dangerous criminals before, but something about Lisa's calm demeanor made him nervous. She had just brutally beaten a Craxi warrior, but she acted like she had done nothing more unusual than solve a math problem. As they led Lisa out of the classroom, the other students finally began to move and speak. Some were crying, others were talking in hushed, frightened voices. A few were recording messages to send home, trying to describe what they had witnessed. Did you see how fast she moved? One student whispered. She broke his armor like it was made of paper, another added. I heard Craxi armor can stop small weapons fire. How did she crack it with just her hands? Professor Quilm was answering questions from the security team, his voice still shaking. The provocation was extreme, he said. The Craxi student had been harassing her for weeks. He struck her first in front of the entire class. What exactly did the human do? Brant asked. I'm not sure, Professor Quilm admitted. She moved so fast. One moment she was sitting at her desk, and the next moment he was on the floor. It was like watching a natural disaster. In the security office, Lisa sat across from Brant and two other officers. She answered their questions calmly and completely, never trying to hide what she had done. He slapped me, she explained. On Earth, that would be considered an assault. I defended myself using minimal force. Brant's compound eyes flickered. Minimal force? You nearly killed him. No, Lisa said simply. If I had wanted to kill him, he would be dead. I used exactly enough force to stop the threat without causing permanent damage. How do you know the difference? Another officer asked. Training, Lisa said. All humans receive basic combat instruction before leaving Earth. We're taught to defend ourselves without causing unnecessary harm. The officers exchanged glances. They had heard about human military training, but they hadn't realized it was so comprehensive or effective. Miss Martinez, Brant said carefully, do you understand the severity of what happened here? Vexstar is the son of a Craxi military commander. His family has significant political influence. Lisa nodded. I understand. But he assaulted me first, in front of witnesses. I was defending myself within the bounds of galactic law. Galactic law, yes, Brant said. But the political implications are not my responsibility, Lisa finished. I'm here as a student and a diplomatic representative. I've done nothing wrong. Commander Sullivan arrived at the academy within 2 hours of the incident. He found Lisa in the security office, still calm and composed despite everything that had happened. Are you all right? He asked, sitting down beside her. I'm fine, Lisa said. A little tired, but fine. Sullivan examined the bruise on her cheek, where Vexstar had hit her. He struck you first? Yes, in front of the entire class. The security cameras will show everything. Sullivan nodded grimly. Good, that makes this a clear case of self-defense. He turned to Chief Brant. I assume you'll be reviewing the footage? Already in progress, Brant confirmed. The preliminary report shows that Miss Martinez was attacked without provocation and responded with what appears to be reasonable force. Reasonable force? Sullivan asked. Have you seen Vexstar's injuries? Extensive but not life-threatening, Brant said. Miss Martinez could have killed him easily, but she chose not to. That shows remarkable restraint. Over the next few hours, word of the incident spread throughout the academy and beyond. Students sent messages to their homeworlds, describing the fight in increasingly dramatic terms. Some versions were exaggerated, but the basic facts remained the same: a small human girl had destroyed a Craxi warrior in seconds. The medical report on Vexstar was extensive. He had suffered severe facial injuries, broken ribs, and nerve damage that would take months to heal properly. The doctors said he was lucky to be alive. The human knew exactly where to strike for maximum effect, the chief medical officer reported. Every blow was placed with surgical precision. This wasn't random violence. It was expert application of anatomical knowledge. The security footage was reviewed by experts from multiple species. They all reached the same conclusion. Lisa's response had been perfectly controlled and devastatingly effective. She had neutralized a much larger opponent using techniques that few beings in the galaxy could match. "Look at this sequence," one analyst said, slowing down the footage. "She identifies his weak points, strikes with precise force, and disables him systematically. This is the kind of training we'd expect from elite military units." "And she's just a student?" another analyst asked. "Apparently all humans receive this level of training," the first analyst replied. "It's considered basic education on their world." The news reached the highest levels of galactic government within days. Military commanders and political leaders watched the footage with growing unease. If a teenage human girl could do this much damage. The investigation took 3 days to complete. During that time, Lisa continued attending her classes as if nothing had happened. Her professors treated her with new respect, and her classmates kept a careful distance. The bruise on her cheek had faded, but everyone who looked at her remembered what those hands could do. Security Chief Brandt called Lisa to his office on the third day to deliver the official findings. Commander Sullivan was also present, along with several Academy administrators who had been following the case closely. "Miss Martinez," Brandt began, "after reviewing all the evidence, including security footage, witness statements, and medical reports, we have reached our conclusion." Lisa sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She showed no signs of nervousness or concern. "The evidence clearly shows that you were the victim of sustained harassment over several weeks," Brandt continued. "Vexstar's behavior escalated to physical assault when he struck you in front of the entire class. Your response was an act of self-defense. What about his injuries?" Lisa asked. "Severe but not permanent," Brandt replied. "The medical team says he will make a full recovery, though it will take several months. More importantly, our analysis shows that you could have inflicted much worse damage but chose not to." "Commander," Sullivan leaned forward, "the restraint you showed was remarkable, Lisa. Most humans in that situation would have done far more damage." Lisa nodded. "I was taught to use only the force necessary to stop a threat. Vexstar was neutralized, so I stopped. That level of control is what saved this situation from becoming a diplomatic crisis," one of the administrators said. "The Craxi government was preparing to demand severe punishment, but the evidence of their son's behavior and your measured response has changed their position." The truth was even more complicated than the administrator let on. The Craxi military had reviewed the security footage with their own experts, and what they saw had shaken them badly. Their warriors were supposed to be among the toughest in the galaxy, yet a small human girl had dismantled one of their best with embarrassing ease. "There will be no charges filed against you," Brandt announced. "In fact, the Academy is implementing new policies to prevent harassment of exchange students. What happened to you should never happen again." Lisa felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "Thank you. When can I return to normal classes?" "Immediately, if you wish," Brandt said. "Though you should know that word of this incident has spread far beyond the Academy. You've become something of a celebrity." That was an understatement. The story had reached news networks across the galaxy. "Human student defeats Craxi warrior" was the headline on dozens of worlds. Video footage of the fight had been analyzed by military experts, combat instructors, and anyone else with an interest in warfare. The reactions varied by species. Predator races like the Craxi were deeply unsettled by what they had seen. They had always considered themselves the apex warriors of the galaxy, but Lisa's demonstration suggested that humans might be even more dangerous. Prey species had a different reaction. For the first time, they saw humans not as strange aliens from a dangerous world, but as potential protectors. If one teenage human could defeat a Craxi warrior so easily, what could a human military unit accomplish? The political implications were enormous. Several worlds that had been considering military action against their neighbors suddenly became much more cautious. Others began reaching out to Earth, hoping to establish defense agreements or trade partnerships on Earth. The reaction was mixed. The government was proud that Lisa had defended herself and represented humanity well, But they were also concerned about the attention. Earth was still new to galactic politics, and they didn't want to be seen as a threat. She did exactly what she was trained to do, General Adams told the Earth Defense Council. She showed restraint, defended herself appropriately, and avoided a diplomatic crisis. We couldn't have asked for a better outcome. But now everyone knows what humans are capable of, Secretary Harrison pointed out. That could make future negotiations more difficult. Or easier, General Adams replied. Sometimes it's better to negotiate from a position of strength. Back at the academy, Lisa found that her daily life had changed dramatically. Students who had ignored her before now watched her with fascination. Some approached her carefully, asking questions about Earth and human capabilities. "Is it true that all humans can fight like that?" asked Zara, the small green alien who had been one of Lisa's first friends at the academy. "Most humans learn basic self-defense," Lisa said. "But everyone has different levels of skill and training." "But you're not even a soldier," Zara said. "You're just a student." "On Earth, the distinction isn't always clear," Lisa explained. "Our world taught us that anyone might need to fight for survival at any time." Her professors also treated her differently. During combat theory class, Professor Voss asked her to demonstrate some of the techniques she had used against Vexstar. "I'd rather not," Lisa said politely. "I don't want anyone to get hurt." "We could use the holographic training system," Professor Voss suggested. "It would be educational for the other students." Lisa reluctantly agreed. The holographic projection of a Craxi warrior appeared in the center of the classroom, identical to Vexstar in size and strength. Lisa approached it calmly, moving with the same fluid grace she had shown during the real fight. The demonstration lasted less than 30 seconds. Lisa showed the class exactly where she had struck and why each blow had been effective. She explained the anatomy involved, the leverage required, and the precise force needed to disable without killing. "The key is understanding your opponent's biology," she said. "Every species has vulnerabilities. Humans study these weaknesses as part of our basic education." The students watched in fascination and growing unease. They were beginning to understand that humans weren't just tough survivors. They were intelligent predators who had turned warfare into a science. After class, Professor Voss pulled Lisa aside. "That was remarkable. Where did you learn such advanced combat techniques?" "Standard education on Earth," Lisa said. "All children learn this in school, along with mathematics and language skills." Professor Voss shook his head in amazement. "What we just saw would be considered graduate-level military training on most worlds. And you say all human children learn this?" "The basics, yes. Earth is dangerous. We have to be prepared." Word of the demonstration spread quickly. Military academies across the galaxy began requesting copies of Earth's educational curriculum, particularly the sections dealing with combat training and tactical thinking. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss the implications of human capabilities. Representatives from dozens of worlds gathered to watch the security footage and hear expert analysis of Lisa's techniques. "This changes everything," declared the Centauri ambassador. "We always assumed humans were just lucky survivors. But this level of combat skill suggests systematic military training." "They're not just tough," added the vegan representative. "They're intelligent, well-trained, and potentially very dangerous." The Earth ambassador, a diplomatic veteran named Patricia Wang, tried to calm the fears. "What you saw was one young woman defending herself after weeks of harassment. This doesn't represent any threat to galactic peace." "But it represents potential," the Craxi ambassador said grimly. His government was still dealing with the embarrassment of having their warrior defeated so thoroughly. "If one untrained human can do this, what about your soldiers?" Ambassador Wang chose her words carefully. "Earth seeks peaceful relationships with all species, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." The message was clear and well received. Humanity was offering friendship but warning against aggression. Several worlds that had been considering hostile actions against Earth quietly reconsidered their positions. 3 weeks after the incident, Vexstar was released from the medical facility. His face was still swollen and bruised, but the doctors said he would make a full recovery. His family had decided to transfer him to a different academy, away from the human who had humiliated him so completely. Before leaving, he asked to speak. With Lisa, they met in a neutral conference room with security guards present. "I wanted to apologize," Vexstar said, his voice still distorted by his healing injuries. "My behavior was inappropriate and dishonorable." Lisa studied his face, looking for signs of deception or continued hostility. She found neither. "Apology accepted," she said simply. "I also wanted to ask you something," Vexstar continued. "When you struck me, you could have killed me easily. Why didn't you?" Lisa considered the question for a moment. "Because killing you wouldn't have solved anything. You were stopped. The threat was over. Taking your life would have been wasteful and wrong." Vexstar nodded slowly. "My people believe that strength should be used to dominate others. But you used your strength to protect yourself while showing mercy to your enemy. That is a different kind of strength." "It's the human way," Lisa said. "We prefer peace, but we're prepared for war." After Vexstar left, Lisa returned to her studies. She completed her exchange program with the highest grades in Academy history. Earning respect and admiration from professors and students alike, the incident had changed her from an unknown exchange student into a symbol of human capability.